Trump hopes the Great Recession will come as soon as possible. Wishing everyone a heartfelt happy 2025. But can it truly be an enjoyable year? In January of last year, when Trump had not yet become president, he made a troubling remark, expressing hope for a U.S. economic crisis in 2024 because he didn't want to be another Hoover. This implied that from the start of last year, he cast a shadow over the United States and the world, causing investors to lose money, businesses to fail, people to lose jobs, graduates to struggle, and everyone to face an unsettled 2024. Then, he became president. So, what does this mean? You can easily find information about President Hoover online, and most of what people say about him is negative. Why is that? At the time, the American people had just elected Hoover, believing a new administration would bring reforms and a brighter future. They invested money and started businesses with optimism. But shortly after Hoover took office, before he could even act, the economy plunged into crisis. The stock market crashed, with the composite stock index, which tracks the best-performing stocks, losing 90% of its value. If the composite index dropped that much, imagine the fate of lesser stocks. Meanwhile, half of all businesses went bankrupt, not just shutting down but collapsing entirely. This led to a sharp rise in unemployment, with over 13 million people losing their jobs. Back then, the U.S. Army was only slightly larger than 1,000 soldiers. Additionally, more than 5,000 banks failed, and America's streets filled with homeless people. Yet, if you spoke to them, you'd find they weren't uneducated or lazy. Many had once owned multiple homes, or made fortunes in business and stocks. So how did the American people judge President Hoover? Even though he was innocent, he hadn't done anything to cause the collapse, he still carries a tarnished reputation. This explains why Trump doesn't want to be seen as a second Hoover. No one wants to be blamed for an economic crisis. But why would Trump hope for one in 2024 before taking office? If the economy stays stable, he wouldn't fear being labeled a Hoover. It's as if the U.S. economy is a game of hot potato. Whoever holds the bomb when it explodes is doomed. Trump wanted this crisis bomb to detonate during Biden's term, pinning the blame on Biden. Then, upon taking office, he could position himself as the economic savior. The trouble is, the bomb hasn't exploded yet, and it's about to be handed to Trump this month. Is he worried? How should he handle it? One option is to wear armor, to prepare policies in advance to prevent an economic crisis. But will there be enough time? Trump hasn't taken office yet, leaving Biden as the only one who can act. However, Biden's Democrats lost the election. Might he unintentionally help Trump succeed? Another approach is to delay the bomb's detonation, something Biden has consistently tried to do, yet this effort cost his party the election. Does he now want the bomb to explode as soon as Trump takes office? Trump once said he has only two choices: either throw the bomb onto other countries, or find a partner to defuse it together, or refuse to take office and flee to avoid it entirely. But the latter isn't going to happen. Hello everyone, and welcome to FortuneCraft. In this video, I'd like to take you on a journey to December 2025. Many people say they're poor because they weren't born into a rich family. But if you could go back a year, would that still be the reason for your poverty? Imagine you knew today that Bitcoin would soar to $100,000 per coin, or that Nvidia stocks would multiply in value. Even if you had no money, no influence, and weren't wealthy, would you borrow at all costs to invest in these assets. Countless NBA stars and lottery winners have become billionaires only to go bankrupt or end up worse off than before within a few years. Even the children of the rich sometimes leave behind a legacy of poverty for the next generation. Being rich or poor doesn't depend on the resources you start with. It hinges on whether your vision is broad and open. If we could predict everything that happens over the next year, wouldn't that be like traveling back in time from December to now? If you want that vision, stop being a pawn or victim on the chessboard and instead use it to rise to the next level. Follow my channel. I'm committed to bringing you valuable insights in the future. Worried you'll listen, but not act? Click like to save this video to your playlist so you can revisit it and follow through anytime. This year might bring things many deem impossible, like the United States and China collaborating to profit from the world's wealth. What does this mean? Before the election, what was Trump's slogan? Sanctions on China and tariffs of up to 60% on Chinese goods. When the world assumed tackling China would be his top priority after taking office, he instead declared that the U.S. and China could work together to solve global problems. He even became the first president in history to invite China to his inauguration. Now, he proposes raising import tariffs by just 10% lower than those on Mexico. What's going on? Many think Trump was tough before the election, but softened afterward. Yet a closer look at his actions and mindset suggests this shift isn't as surprising as it seems. Whether you realize it or not, under Trump or even Hillary, most U.S. policies have been inconsistent, except for one constant: punishing China. So, was the U.S.-China relationship destined to deteriorate forever? In reality, China earned vast sums of dollars while the U.S. bought its cheap goods. Before China joined the WTO and began trading globally, its foreign debt exceeded its reserves. It owed the world more than it earned. Then the U.S. approached China saying, "You handle production and sell to us. We'll pay you in dollars, which you can use to buy from the world. You provide goods, we provide money. We'll focus on profiting through investments in securities, bonds, capital flows, and interest rate adjustments, avoiding the heavy lifting." This kept U.S. prices low, as everything could be bought cheaply from China. China amassed dollars and rapidly grew into the world's second-largest economy. Some argue China's rise threatened the U.S., prompting efforts to punish and control it. But looking back, that's not entirely true. President Obama invited China to form a G2, a partnership to dominate the world together. On Wall Street, there's a saying, "If you're not at the table, you're on the menu." The U.S. was inviting China to the feast, where the rest of the world was the main course, to share the meal. If you were China, would you accept from the U.S. perspective? It might seem like a generous offer to celebrate together, but Obama understood strategy well. To see why, let's dive into Chinese history. Before the Qin dynasty, China was split into 7 warring states. Qin, the strongest, faced an alliance of the other 6. Qin sent an envoy to the second strongest state, Qin, proposing, "We're the 2 most powerful states. Conflict seems inevitable. Why not cooperate instead? You govern the East as Eastern Emperor, and I'll rule the West as Western Emperor. Sound familiar?" The king of Qi agreed, taking the title of Eastern Emperor to co-rule the world. But the other states grew resentful. They'd allied against Qin, only for Qi to betray them by partnering with the enemy. The 5 other states attacked Qi, weakening it swiftly. Qin then crushed the remaining resistance, unifying the world. If China had accepted Obama's G2 invitation, the U.S. wouldn't have needed to act alone. Other nations would have turned on China. At this banquet, the U.S. was the host, China the guest. A guest can't challenge the host or take its place. The catch: China had to avoid developing high-tech industries, stuck mass-producing 1 billion T-shirts for one U.S. airplane. China declined. After this rejection, the U.S. began confronting China, perhaps thinking, "We offered goodwill, but you showed malice. Do you want to overtake me?" This sparked Trump's trade wars and Biden's financial battles. Today, China's housing prices and stock markets have plummeted. Why? The U.S. exported inflation to China. Here's how. China controls foreign exchange. American businesses can't use dollars directly to buy Chinese goods. They must convert them to yuan. For every $1 billion entering China, the government issues about 7 billion yuan to facilitate trade. During the 2008 financial crisis, the U.S. printed money aggressively, flooding China with $3 trillion in a few years. China had to issue at least 21 trillion yuan in response. That much new money devalued the currency, sparked inflation, and drove up prices. A bowl of noodles in Beijing that cost 5 yuan soon cost 10. To manage this, China funneled the cash into real estate, keeping consumer prices stable, but sending housing costs soaring, making homes unaffordable for many. When the trade war hit, the U.S. cut trade with China, pulling money out. Raising interest rates further enticed Chinese investors to move funds to the U.S. For every dollar withdrawn, China lost 7 yuan. Rapid outflows, coupled with rising U.S. interest rates, left Chinese real estate firms, many indebted to the U.S., unable to repay loans, triggering bankruptcies. Panic ensued, investment dried up, and markets collapsed, including stocks. In essence, the U.S. inflated China's asset values, then withdrew funds, crashing those assets, and used a stronger dollar to buy them back cheaply, a shearing the sheep tactic. This strategy cost Japan 3 decades of growth, forced South Korea's Samsung to cede shares, and pressured Europe similarly. Yet China's strict financial controls limited foreign penetration, keeping asset prices low and thwarting a full buyout. So why is Trump now revisiting this cooperative path with China? Recently, more countries have joined the de-dollarization push, shunning U.S. dollars and bonds. Even Japan and the U.K., top buyers of U.S. bonds, are reconsidering. Nations, once reliant on the U.S. as are aligning with China, forcing Trump to disrupt this trend. China may reject the banquet again, but refusal doesn't rule out cooperation. By late 2023, amid fierce trade and financial conflicts, the U.S. and China quietly formed a small financial group. Afterward, the U.S. eased interest rate hikes, and China bought U.S. bonds for months, a sign of possible negotiation. For Trump, defusing the economic bomb is key, and leveraging China may be the best way. Reducing conflict benefits both. But here's the catch. Withdrawing money from China means the U.S. can't offload inflation there anymore. Americans lose access to cheap Chinese goods and must produce domestically at higher costs due to elevated U.S. wages. This could spark deflation. Meanwhile, U.S. stocks and real estate are inflated like an overfull tank, and unsold government bonds signal a potential collapse across assets, with commercial real estate as a likely trigger. See my last 2 videos for more. Trump's biggest fear is this bomb exploding on his watch. What can he do? Look at Hoover during the Great Depression. He imposed 50% tariffs on imports, hoping to boost domestic purchases and revenue. Instead, other nations retaliated with tariffs, halving U.S. exports. Money dwindled, and prices rose. Trump plans similar tariffs, but they'd face resistance not just globally, but from U.S. capitalists. Companies like Samsung, Korean in name, funnel most profits to American shareholders via Wall Street. Of $100 earned, $70 goes to the U.S. Trump's push to bring factories back risks hurting these capitalists. Most issues like U.S. debt, inflation, unemployment, and war are ticking bombs he must negotiate away. Yet internal conflicts, like his pre-election rift with Wall Street, complicate matters. Capitalists control the stock market, manipulating it via Federal Reserve rates. They can prop it up or let it crash, fueling recession fears. This is why Trump dreads becoming another Hoover. Stained by a lasting bad name, his priority after taking office must be swift talks with China. Not to co-rule the world, but to restore enough cooperation to weather the storm. Recently, he even floated integrating Canada into the U.S. as the 51st state, erasing Canada as a nation. Imagine that the U.S. would overtake Russia as the world's largest country, gaining Canada's oil, minerals, water, and talent. All that wealth would boost U.S. income, easing overspending woes. A pipe dream? Maybe. Trump's offhand remarks often mask calculated intent, shaped by his team. Every presidential word, especially in diplomacy, is deliberate. Lately, Trump has stressed that allies must pay the U.S. taxes or military protection fees, hinting that in 2025, a cash-strapped U.S. will extract resources from elsewhere to survive. This started last year. Money from Europe and Japan has flowed in, and most currencies are weakening against the dollar. This may just be the beginning. Unable to defuse its own bomb, the U.S. might push it onto allies. Pre-election promises and post-election actions differ. Winning the presidency is the first goal. Fixing America's woes is a next. Voters judge results, not pledges. If Trump fulfills his promises but becomes another Hoover, his legacy could still sour. Thus, U.S.-China tension may ease via negotiation, giving both sides breathing room. Both intend to talk. The question is, what each brings to the table. How will Trump manage China, and what are his cards? Simple. I concede a little. You do too. What's China's biggest ask? If the U.S. grants it, will it harm America? That depends on your view. Share your thoughts below. A few honest words. Many know they're being exploited or ruined, but feel powerless as their hard-earned wealth vanishes. Why? They lack options. It's not courage they're missing, but choices and steady income. What if migration leaves them jobless or wipes out their savings? Most inch along because they must. Lacking passive income, they toil where they were born. That's why I urge learning to invest. You don't have to learn from me, but in life, start ASA. People need choices, like choosing to migrate or stay, not just staying by default. My wealth came from overcoming my generation's struggles, and I aim to pass that knowledge on. That's why I create this content from the heart. Ladies and gentlemen, recent years have been turbulent. Wars, diseases, downturns. I don't expect 2025 to be all fun, but I hope you'll have options. Today, 2025 begins. New starts are often calm, yet U.S. prosperity hides economic mines Will they explode, hurting our assets? How will it unfold? Time's short, so I'll wrap up here. I share free insights on wealth, entrepreneurship, investing, and financial freedom. Don't miss out. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video. I wish everyone who enjoyed it achieves financial freedom soon. If you find a helpful quote or two to improve your life, I'm content. I'm FortuneCraft. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.